I'm in an organization, and I'm going to be retiring in another 2 years' time, right? So would it be great if somebody was to have a conversation with me saying, okay, tell me after retirement what you, I mean, men are supposed to retire at 58 these days, right?
Yeah.
And at 58, the mind, the body is still pretty active. And most of the time it is active till 80.
Yeah.
So is there a role that somebody can play as a retirement coach for these people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, I would say more of, I think we always tend to, there are sort of workshops which are held, which I have also been a part of, wherein we obviously talk about the health part, and somebody talks about the finance part, because that is the one which is sort of
Correct, correct.
concentrated a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
But nobody talks about what to do,
correct, correct. That's
or
why I've
gives
asked that. Yeah,
or gives a peep that this is what can be done. I mean, as far as I know, with, I mean, knowing you and knowing, of course, Beta as well, because that as a coach, we obviously contribute to the fact. I mean, even as a doctor, for example, I can tell you that these are your diseases, these are the medications you have to take, but
yeah,
ultimately you have to take it. You have to show that discipline to
correct,
sort of take it. So
correct.
I think, but late, you in a developmental state, it is much easier. For example, if somebody talks to them at 70, 12 years down the line, when they're always sort of, I mean, it's never late, but then it
Yeah,
becomes more difficult, and you have to maybe sort of come back to the goals. I think no, it's definitely, I think more and more corporates should sort of think about that. Everybody does these retirement workshops, but I hope it's not only for the sake of doing for it, rather
yeah,
than
yeah,
actually having a long-term plan. And the day every sort of company realizes that no, this particular healthcare, I mean, this particular population is a very prudent and productive population who
right,
can
right.
continue to contribute. I think that is when this sustained sort of effort will be there, where you never know, we might have a specific workshop wherein we say that no, now it's an 80 years workshop, so where we have to meet everybody above 80, and let's plan about what you're going to do in the
Yeah,
next 10
yeah,
years. I mean, there was a time we could not talk about 40, but now we are talking about 80 and 100. So
correct,
obviously
correct.
health has only improved.
How does India compare with the rest of the nations, the rest of the countries in terms of elder care? Or what are the top five senior issues in India?
Yeah, I think as far as, I mean, we are getting there. As I said that, I mean, we got into the absolute training phase only in 96. A lot of older people have, I mean, a lot of doctors before also have taken care, but maybe not necessary in the way that a geriatrician does, purely because it's a specialty which came later. So I think the most common problems one can see, of course, I think dementia is very, very sort of,
Okay.
it is stocked in, it is something which can be really, really disturbing, purely because if somebody thinks that, oh my god, I cannot remember anything, I mean, when you have it even for a second, you get really frustrated. So
Yeah.
imagine not having it at all. I think that's very common. Then one of the issues which is very commonly neglected, I think, is hearing. I think hearing is also something which is very, very important. It's a correctable to a lot of extent. To a lot of people, it can be correctable to an extent, but whatever extent it is, it should be done. And I think visual disturbances, because these affect quality of life.
Yeah.
If you can't hear, if you can't see, then whatever, how much ever I keep saying, you should learn. How do you do that?
Yeah.
So then I think nutrition is very important, and with that comes teeth. I mean, I can give you the best diet possible. I can say you take the balanced diet, but you don't have teeth, or you are not comfortable with your dentures.
Right.
So that can obviously be. Then I think all the metabolic diseases are very, very common. I mean, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, stroke. I mean, depression is getting there, because more and more people are diagnosing depression now, rather than just branding it. No, this is
Right.
something which is happening because you're getting old, and maybe that's about. I think this ageist attitude which a lot of people have is something which should stop, because not everything should be put on the aging, because age is just a number. It's about how you look at yourself. And
It's
I
for the
don't think it
mind.
should be, yeah, it should be not a fascination of anti-aging or maybe getting
Yeah.
young. It should be a fascination of aging graceful.
Right. Aging gracefully is the magic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when should a person start? I mean, for instance, most people retire at 58 to 60. So should I start thinking about all of this when I am 50, when I'm 55? What are some of the people you might have met? Some people who have done or managed this very well. What have you found?
I
When
think
did
I
they
think
start? What they do? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the concentration should be in the 50s, purely because you are in a case where you have started thinking about that.
Mm.
I mean, these days, of course, there's a very fine line. It's never a retirement. It's only
Yeah,
maybe switching over. You
correct.
plan for maybe something you want to do, but you're building it up,
Right,
because if you're
right.
planning to do something on your own, it takes time.
Yeah,
Or if you're planning to do something with somebody else, you're obviously in constant conversations, but you can only sort of commit later. So you prepare it. So as far as the overall perspective is concerned, where you want to take an overall of your health, your physical part, your, I mean, maybe your work part, your home part, then plan to sort of enjoy. I think you should sort of do it in the 50s, purely because you will be able to, you are not, it's not hitting you, because
right.
after 55 is also fine according to me. 50s would be better. 60 is
Yeah,
just too close. I mean, 1 or 2
right.
years just around the retirement, then it doesn't keep you a plan. It just keeps you maybe 1, 2, 3. And if 1 and 2 fail and 3 becomes dicey, then you become a bit sort of, I mean,
Right.
should I have done this earlier, and should I have not? So I think 50s is a good, but as far as health is concerned, I think everybody should start much earlier,
Much,
because
much better.
it's not something that nothing dawns. I mean, it's not that suddenly somebody gets a stroke. There has been a risk factor which must have built up. That is why these things have sort of happened. Diabetes, for example. And I mean, the only problem these days is what is also happening is you need to know where you have to stop, because youngsters are also dying. I mean, there
Yeah,
have
yeah.
been people who have been pumping iron in the gym, having the best cardiologists, having the best diet, but they have suddenly died. So I think the thing about stress, I think that is something we keep undermining. People in stress is one thing, people expressing stress and seeking help is completely another thing. People, so
In fact, that's very interesting that you should say it. I know people who are under stress, but they don't know they are in stress. Is that possible?
yeah, it's because they sometimes it's just put into, I mean, things like, oh, it's just the nature of the job, or it's just that I have to, I'm so it just seems continuous. And I think maybe if you have observed it, actually it is only increased in the pandemic, because work from home has blurred lines. There is no office time, there is no lunch time, there is
Correct.
no home time, there is no I mean, if you're in an
And no
office,
privacy.
yeah, if you're in a half an hour, for example, you actually sit across and chat something completely not related maybe to the work,
Uh,
and then come back and sort of go back to work. Then the process of going back home, that was also a process.
yeah,
And then go back, maybe have your tea, relax, and then that the day ends. But now what is happening is, it's like, no, we can have a meeting at 6, we can have a meeting at 7, we can have a meeting at 8. I
yeah.
mean, why? Because why? You must have got up late only, no? I mean, or whatever, or you're at home only. So it's just that generalizations,
uh,
and it has really, I mean, affected both the young and the old as well.
correct, correct.
Because the older adults thought, I mean, I don't blame either of them. They thought now they are home, they'll spend more time. But it didn't happen, purely because the companies and whatever, they made sure that all that particular time was there. Obviously, because it got diluted, so meetings didn't have an upper limit.
Correct.
So I
The
think I
Zoom has become the room, the drawing room,
yeah,
meeting room
absolutely,
at home.
absolutely. And what I am hoping, which what will happen is, ultimately it will be a positive in that we will have a hybrid model. For example, if I do a public meeting somewhere, now I know that somebody in Delhi can also watch me.
Yeah. So
Or
that's the benefit.
yeah,
That's
I
the
think that's a
benefit.
big benefit. So for example, if you can come to my OPD and see me, I'm okay. But now I can see that bedridden patient at home also, because I can see them through video, and I
Yeah,
know that they're doing well or not. So there are obviously, I mean, advantages and disadvantages, but I
yeah.
feel the biggest silver lining of this particular time has been that elders have sort of taken up to technology, which
Today,
something
for
I know.
instance, we have two people who are not in Bombay, but they're attending this year.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any question that you think I should have asked, but I have not asked?
No, I think overall, obviously, you have sort of covered most things. I would say, I mean, I have sort of told what the motto of geriatrics is. It's about overall quality of life and
Yeah.
making sure that the holistic care is sort of taken. I would just want to dwell maybe a bit about the fact prevention, I think, is very
Right.
important.
Right.
I think you need to have a good sleep. The quality and quantity are two different things. You can be on the bed for 10 hours and not get good sleep, but you
Right.
can be in the bed for 4 to 5 hours, and if it works for you, then I think that is good. So sleep is very important, and it's good for memory as well, because
Yeah.
most of your building blocks of the brain actually happen, consolidation happens actually in the sleep. I mean, if you remember when we were kids, I mean, one day before the exam, we were always told that you should sleep early. It was
Yeah.
not because we are going to be fresh, it's because whatever we have read, that is going to sort of encapsulate and become more firm in our brains. Then another aspect of prevention, I think, is also immunization. And I'm not saying it because of COVID. Pneumonia vaccines were there before as well. Influenza vaccines were also there. People only used to take vaccines when they used to travel to certain countries because they had to travel, and not necessarily because they believed in the fact that they can be protective. But studies clearly say, again, I would reiterate that it's not that you won't get pneumonia, but the fact that if you take the vaccines, then it obviously helps you in having a better chance in fighting the disease as compared to else. Then I think prevention is better than cure has been used so many times. But being prevention is not only thinking about the fact that I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this. Prevention is a overall plan in which you basically make sure that your diet is good, but at the same time you do physical exercise. At the same time, you keep your levels of stress less. Give yourself a me time, and that me time can be only you. I mean, it could be anything. It could be meditation. It could be used just closing your eyes for half an hour, not thinking about anything. It could be you singing a song, or it could be you writing down something. But you should always have your sort of me time. Very important thing in older adults, I think, is the caregivers. We tend to forget them a lot because that caregiver might be another older adult.
Yes.
Or maybe even a younger person. Age is no bar in that also, because nobody selects their caregivers. You obviously have them and they take very good care of anybody who is in a problem. But we need to take care of the caregiver so that there is a better care for the older adult. That is something we have to understand, because there can be a lot of caregiver stress, especially a person who's got dementia, if an older adult, and somebody who has to take care.
And the caregiver could also be a senior citizen.
Absolutely. And in most cases, it is. It's not necessarily
husband,
that.
wife.
It could be that way. And these days, even more. It's also a father son or a father daughter or a son. I mean, mother, because it's 90-year-old being taken care by a 60-year-old.
Correct.
People are living. People are living long. So I think more than anything, as a caregiver, this is to the caregivers, take care of yourselves as well. Purely because your health will monitor the fact how you will be able to take care of others better. Seek help. I think that is important. If you're not able to do it, there are professional people there who will sort of take your burden. Your burden should reduce, then only you will be able to take better care. Then another very, very important thing which I would want to highlight is, ultimately everybody sort of always says that what does a geriatrician sort of do actually? Now, a geriatrician is basically somebody who's trained in treating older adults only. So, and we usually create something known as a problem list, in which every problem is important and every problem is addressed. For example, if somebody has a pneumonia, yes, I am going to treat the pneumonia acutely because that's the main problem. But that doesn't mean if somebody has a history of falls, has a fear of fall, has an imbalance, has a dementia, I would not take care of all that. So it's basically kind of a one-stop place wherein everything should be taken care of. Sometimes it can need help of other specialties. Yes. For example, for dentists might be needed, obviously, ophthalmologists might be needed. But the key word in elder care, I think, is quality of life. The more independent you are, the more sort of happy you are, the more longer you live, the more independent you can be only if you are more healthy. So I think health is something which is sort of a common aspect, a common chain which sort of links both independence and dependence. So I think that is something which one should really sort of take. And also, I think taking an initiative has no age. So if somebody wants to take an initiative in anything, they should. Purely because it's not, maybe that's why I think more and more platforms for older adults should come up, and there are plenty now. I mean, before there weren't many. It could be for depicting your skills in singing, or it could be for depicting your skills in business, or it could be just for the fact that you want to spend that time that we usually do through those support groups. Always try to learn new skills if you have the time. Sometimes you don't. I mean, you might be working so hard even after a role that you might not have time to even learn new things. But giving a challenge to your brain always helps. Brain gets bored very, very easily. So if you do the routine things daily, it will not accept it as a challenge. It is said that even by using the brush from a different hand, by brushing from a different hand, actually
left
the challenge,
hand, right to the left hand.
It gives sort of a neuroplasticity or creates new circuits. Another thing is always know enough about your health, but not depend upon Google for everything.
Not Dr. Google.
Yeah, why I'm saying this is because it just creates too much of stress.
Right.
I mean, you should know what to know. Ultimately, yes, I mean, Google doesn't put a filter that, you are not a doctor, we will not show you more. But try to make sure that you clear your doubts when you go to the doctor, rather than thinking that, oh my God, I have some swelling, definitely it's going to be a cancer. No, we should not go into those extremities. We have to make sure we ask our doubts.
Yeah.
And I think from an elder care perspective, the most important thing that an older adult needs is time.
Right.
Because when we get to know health issues, sometimes it could be challenging, maybe because they are not able to hear, or maybe they are not able to see, or maybe they are not able to understand. I think communication is a key. And I think both sides, sometimes in general, an older adult might have to take 2 steps forward, and then the younger person also might have to take 2 steps forward and to meet in between. I think that's the way everybody should sort of go ahead. I think elder care is something which is really sort of potentially one of very, very, very sort of, I can say, very potentially big things which might happen. But the center of all this will always be older adults. So they as resources, and they as, you can say, I mean, they as inspiration would always keep to inspiring maybe even me to actually sort of continue to provide better care.
Do you think you have a few minutes to take any questions from
Yeah, sure.
the others? Just how much more time can you give us? Another 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Any other questions? Paramu, Chandra, Ganpati?
I have only one thing. You spoke about demantics.
I can't hear you. Can you speak a little louder?
About dementia, etc. What about Parkinson's? Where does this come in the whole scheme of things?
Yeah, Parkinson's is also basically a very much a degenerative neurological disorder only. And yeah, it can be quite debilitating. And a lot of people with Parkinson's actually have tremors. They are not able to walk. They have an imbalance. They have difficulty to even turn. So yeah, it is very much in the spectrum of diseases. Yes, it's a disease which can really sort of make an older adult dependent. And unfortunately, certain people can also have dementia with Parkinson's. So then that becomes even more sort of difficult to handle. So yeah, till we are in this, allaying of symptoms is very important. The more we are able to sort of control the symptoms to a longer time, the better.
Yeah.
It becomes difficult to handle as we go older.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Paramu, Chandra?
I think mostly I think Prem has covered all things. We don't have any special things to ask.
Prem, is it all right for me to share the recording on LinkedIn and
Yeah,
Facebook?
sure. Absolutely.
Because I think it's so informative, and many of the things that you talked about with this kind of intensity and clarity is not necessarily available when you go to website, right? And as you rightly said, anytime you go and check a website, it immediately says, I think something more serious is happening. Like, for instance, I have this, currently the body temperature seems to be warmer than usual. And you go to WebMed and it says some major problem for you kind of stuff. People tend to panic in this age group. Yeah. So,
And I don't blame anybody to be referring any age group. For example, what the net will give you is 10 differential diagnoses, and they're like,
yeah. So it's very confusing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think what you really need at this point in time in our lives is somebody who's knowledgeable, who's reassuring, who's caring, and who's empathetic. I think there's empathy.
I think the key word is empathy and not sympathy.
Yeah, exactly. But absolutely, I'm so delighted that you took the time for us. And I'm going to, as I said, share the recording with a lot more people. I'm truly grateful for your time. And absolutely, I actually have two mixed feelings. On one side, I'm saying truly grateful to you as a professional, right? On the other side, I'm saying I'm so proud of you that you're my close friend's son and you're doing such fantastic work. So on both kids, I think we must give you a big round of applause, right? Thank you so much again. And if there is anything at all we can do to help you in your cause, as long as we are able and we are willing, we'll be able to do that. I'm absolutely delighted to do that if you think there is anything we can do.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much, Prem. Thanks, Parvo. Thanks, Chandra.
Thanks, Prem.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Nice
Bye.
Okay.
conversation.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
later,
Bye.
Sridhar. Call you
Thank
later.
you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Chandra, after go put number.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, Anand.
Bye.
Okay, see you.
Bye. Bye, Chandra. Ciao.
Okay, bye. Bye.